All right, welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're setting up a truly mythic clash. We're diving into this intense tension between massive, overarching external empires and this incredible concept of radical, untouchable internal freedom. So, whether you're a history buff, a philosophy nerd, or just looking for a really structured breakdown of this dynamic, you are absolutely in the right place. We're going to explore how a single historical life can be viewed not just as a religious cornerstone, but as a profound psychological phenomenon.
Okay, let's dive into this. But I say unto you. Now, that is not just some transition in a speech, right? It's a radical declaration of individual sovereignty. The source material highlights this as the exact moment a historical figure looks at the incredibly rigid, established morality of his entire culture and just effortlessly overturns it. He isn't quoting some other scholar, he's not appealing to a king, he is instinctively creating his own values from the sheer abundance of his inner life. It's a real game changer. Section 1. The Empire and the Herd.
So picture the dominant forces of the era. You've got the heavy, transactional, imperial machinery of Rome just bearing down on regional politics. And then couple that with what our sources describe as the dry, life-denying scholasticism of the Pharisees. It was a world entirely built on rigid rules, guilt, and punishment. But in stark contrast, our protagonist counters all of that with the kingdom of heaven. And here is the absolutely crucial distinction. This was not preached as some reward in a distant afterlife or a system of future judgment. No, it was presented as an immediate internal state of the heart. It is literally the ultimate contrast between external transactional politics and a profound, immediate spiritual freedom.
Section 2. The Four Divine Archetypes. Now, what's really interesting about this is how the four distinctive narratives, the Gospels that canonize this figure, give us completely unique character variants. It's like a giant puzzle. In Matthew, he's the promised Messiah, the ultimate king fulfilling ancient Hebrew prophecies. He establishes his authority through these powerful discourses, like the Sermon on the Mount, completely redefining the law. Then in Mark, we get a super fast-paced, action-driven account of a suffering servant. Mark uses this messianic secret, where he's constantly telling his followers to stay quiet about his identity, which really highlights his deep humanity and tireless service to the marginalized. Luke gives us the compassionate savior. Writing with the precision of a historian, Luke details his deep concern for the poor, women, and outcasts, famously illustrated in parables like the Good Samaritan. And finally, John bypasses traditional parables altogether to present the divine logos, the eternal word made flesh. John focuses heavily on mystical discourses, 7 grand I am statements, and these incredible signs of heavenly glory. And just as their focuses differ, so do their interpretations of the supreme ordeal, the crucifixion. Matthew frames the cross as the inevitable climax of this massive clash with religious authorities. Mark views it urgently, not as a defeat, but as a supreme ransom-paying act of service. Luke concludes with a really joyful focus on the physical reality of the resurrection, while John portrays the cross as an hour of ultimate glorification and sovereign triumph over darkness. So we get 4 distinct lenses on a single historical climax. Section 3. Enter the Holy Anarchist. Now, our source material introduces a fascinating alternative lens here, drawing heavily on Nietzschean philosophy. Through this view, Jesus emerges not as a teacher of dogma, but as a sublime psychological phenomenon, a proto-Ubermensch, if you will, or a holy anarchist. This term defines someone who doesn't just follow the rules, but actually lives his own truth. He stands completely above the imperial and religious structures we just talked about, operating entirely from that sheer abundance of his inner life. It's wild to think about. So how did he fight this battle? Well, he did it through a radical mastery of language, what we can call a philology of existence. The parables he told, they weren't just nice little stories. They were literally used as weapons to shatter literalism. By using metaphor and symbol, he was able to dissolve the heavy, rigid concepts of sin and judgment that the society around him was completely built upon. He was speaking directly past the authorities and straight into the immediate lived experience of the individual. It's just brilliant. But this historical arc builds into what our sources call the philosophical tragedy. Step 1 is this radical life of supreme resistance and non-defensive love. Step 2 is the crucifixion. But look closely at steps 3 and 4. He did not seek to form a church or a new priesthood. Those institutions came way later. And according to this radical philosophical critique, they actually corrupted his legacy. They transformed his message of profound inner freedom into a system that philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche heavily criticized as a resentment-driven slave morality. The establishment, essentially, entirely missed the point of the original anarchist's radical independence.
So the crucial point is how this radical lens views his end. The cross wasn't just some punishment he suffered, but a demonstration he orchestrated. It was the ultimate proof of his philosophy, for sure. He refused to defend himself. He resisted his accusers not with violence, but with a serene silence. He was showing us in real time that his internal kingdom was totally untouchable by the corruption and power structures of the world around him.
Section 4. Sovereignty over societal dogma. So what does this all mean for us? How do we claim this untouchable internal kingdom today? I want you to really think about how this mythic fable of individual sovereignty applies to your own daily life. Every single day, we're pressured by our own versions of the herd mentality, right? Rigid societal dogma, transactional politics, it's everywhere. So how do you actively resist that? Well, here is a path to internal liberation based on this holy anarchist archetype, and this brilliantly illustrates how we can apply these concepts. 1. Reject the transactional politics of power. You've got to stop viewing every interaction as a zero-sum game. 2. Dissolve societal literalism. Don't just take the rigid labels and judgments of society at face value. Look deeper. 3. Cultivate the immediate heart. That means finding profound freedom right now, today, not waiting for it in some distant future. And 4. Practice non-defensive love. Honestly, it's a blueprint for building an inner life that worldly corruption simply cannot touch.
He died on the cross to demonstrate how one ought to live, proving his internal freedom was entirely untouchable by worldly corruption. It is the ultimate victory of the mythic hero. Not conquering the empire by force, but by rendering it completely irrelevant to the soul. So I'll leave you with this. If all your external comforts and defenses were stripped away today, what values would remain in the sheer abundance of your own inner life?